Welcome into 247 Sports Live. I am Emily Proud. A reminder to hit that like button and make sure that you are subscribed because it is officially game week for a handful of teams. It's week 0, or as I like to call it, the soft launch of the college football season. Either way, we are all excited about it here, and we'll start by breaking down the game of the week. So for that, let's head to Dublin, Ireland. That's right, it's a game between Florida State and Georgia Tech. Now this one's been played hundreds, if not thousands of times already in the College Football 25 video game, but now it's almost time to play it for real. The ACC clash will take place in Dublin for reasons unknown to me, but it adds a little extra flavor to a week 0 slate in need of it. So let's welcome in our friend, Brendan Sonnone of Noles247. Brendan, I laid it out. It's really the most neutral of neutral site games, right? Whether that's travel, time change, new environment, somehow getting 85 plus passports together, whatever it is. Tell us, what is the impact of this game being in Ireland?
So you mentioned the passports. Yes, that's been years in the making for FSU to get ready for the logistics for this game. It's been quite complicated, according to Mike Norvell, but they're wheels up this evening. They're taking off on Wednesday evening. Will arrive in Dublin sometime Thursday morning, Irish time. I think Irish Standard Time is what it is. It's like a 5-hour difference from the East Coast. So they'll be landing around like 10 o'clock Thursday morning Irish time and getting ready for doing a practice pretty like shortly after they land, actually, to kind of try to get on schedule and get used to the game time over there with the time change. So that's a dynamic that's interesting that FSU is trying to deal with it, as is Georgia Tech. You did know, Emily, that Florida State, or that there's not like a home field advantage, you would think, but I think this is going to end up being a pretty lopsided attended game with a lot of FSU fans there. I'm not sure that Georgia Tech is going to have quite as many people at FSU, thinking it'll be a quote-unquote pseudo-home game is what I've been told. So it'd be interesting to see if that materializes, but I think FSU is pretty confident with the turnout that they're going to have compared to their opponent for this game. How that turns out in terms of like crowd noise and whatnot, I have no idea, but an interesting dynamic to follow along with this weekend.
Good to know. Let's talk about the play on the field. So for Florida State, as it's been well documented, they lost their leading passer, rusher, receiver to All-Americans on the defensive side of the ball. So where is Mike Norvell's confidence level for this really new-looking team headed into 2024?
Yeah, they do lose a lot. You can't argue that. That's for sure. Florida State does return a handful of veterans with a lot of experience and all ACC type of accolades. Darius Washington was a first-team All-ACC left tackle last year. He's been awesome in camp. Patrick Payton was an All-ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year a couple years ago. He's kind of the running mate to Jared Verse the last couple seasons. He's stepping into a bigger role. And there's a few other guys that kind of fit that same mold of having been good before, and now you're being asked to take over the All-American type of candidates for the Jordan Travises, the Jared Verses, those type of guys. And obviously no easy task, but something that kind of Mike Norvell prides himself in is that there's a lot of development within the program. And that's kind of what's interesting about this season is there is a lot of raw talent. There's a lot of new faces from the transfer portal, about a dozen or so pieces who've been brought in from premier programs across the country. A lot of underclassmen who had some decent roles like on special teams and rotational spots last year that they're expecting a lot out of. One thing Mike Norvell has been pretty consistent with is that this is, and it's been since the spring, that this is probably the strongest and fastest team he's had on paper with like the GPS tracking and off-field like performance stuff they monitor since he's been at Florida State from top to bottom. Now, how does that manifest itself in wins and on-field play? That's going to depend on how guys step up into those new roles. But Mike Norvell does seem pretty relaxed about this team. Seems confident what he has. I think he's legitimately excited to see how new players step up in those new roles. That's going to be another dynamic that's going to be really interesting to follow this season.
Being faster certainly can't hurt, so that is definitely a good sign. One of those newcomers, DJ Uiagalelei, comes back to the ACC. I know everybody has that October 5th date circled on their calendar for the revenge game with Clemson, but overall, what are expectations for him this year?
High, like legitimately high expectations. And I think there's this interesting disconnect from those in the college football world and then those more isolated Florida State, and also some of those in East Lansing who saw what DJ Uiagalelei did. Now the Michigan State staff was when they were at Oregon State and saw a player legitimately ascend and develop from his time at Clemson. FSU internally has been really pleased with his development since spring practice. They like what he did in the spring. They thought he really carried it over well into camp. Back in the spring, they were talking about him being ahead of schedule. I think that kind of still stands. Like They know what they have with him. He's been really sharp in preseason practice, minimize turnovers. That's something that he did last year as well at Oregon State. And again, internally, like they think he's a guy you can win a lot of games with. Now, what that looks like statistic-wise, I'm not sold that DJ Uiagalelei is going to be a Heisman candidate or anything like that. Even all ACC, I'm not sure. But I think he's going to be solid. I think he can minimize turnovers. And I think he's going to be able to give you a lot in the downfield passing game as well as the running game, which is something that I think a lot of people kind of sleep on with him. He's 255 pounds, but moves well at that size and quite powerful as well. He'll be part of the rushing attack too. So yeah, they like what he can do. They think brings a lot of maturity and a pretty diverse skill set as well.
I will give the general college football public a bit of a slide here because those Oregon State games were very late at night, so they didn't get to see him, but he was fantastic last year, and you can check the stats as well. Let's talk about, on the other side, Georgia Tech does return its leading passer, its leading rusher, and leading receiver from last season. So looking at the Yellow Jackets, what challenges will they bring on Saturday?
Yeah, it's that offense. That offense, especially the skill talent. I think in a vacuum, I'm not sure I would take Georgia Tech's skill talent over Florida State's, but I think it's pretty close. You probably convince me if that would not be the craziest thing in the world. Yeah, Haynes King is a really fun quarterback, a little like sporadic at times. He's got some like daredevil to him. He throws a lot of interceptions, but the good's really good. He pushes the ball downfield, runs a lot. I think he had like 700, 800 yards rushing last year. That's complemented with a 1,000-yard running back who was a converted wide receiver, and Jamal Haynes. Like they have legitimate weapons on the outside as well. So that's like, to me, if this game on Saturday ends up being close, I think it's because Georgia Tech turns it into somewhat of a shootout and can manufacture some points early on in the game when FSU's defense is still trying to find its footing a little bit. Like they're capable. I think they rushed for 200 yards against Georgia last year. This is a team that can find ways to move the ball. I really respect what Brent Key's done there in a short amount of time. And yeah, if this is a close game, it's because that offense did something pretty well.
Yeah, a lot of those rushing yards coming from their quarterback. So we had some fun with this. We simulated the game 20 times on the College Football 25 video game. We showed some highlights at the beginning of the segment. And Georgia Tech did pull out the win 3 times in those simulations. So if that were to happen in the real game, you mentioned how it might be close, but how would they get it done and pull off the upset?
So I think the shootout method is probably like it ends up being a couple of things. I think Florida State's going to be able to control the game for the most part. They're so strong in the trenches on both sides of the ball. But if Georgia Tech's able to make this a contest and maybe even pull off the upset, I think it's because one, Haynes King protects the football more than he traditionally does, and you get the good version of him, which is a really fun football player. And that would be him spreading the ball around, pushing it vertically. I think they returned 4 of their leading receivers, like all 4 of their leading receivers from last year. They got some legit speed outside. So I think that's like really what we would see is like busted coverages from Florida State secondary, which is supposed to be a strength for this team, but you're also replacing a starting safety from last year. You're starting nickel corner. You're starting outside corner, Renardo Green, who was a second-round draft pick. Like you're missing 3 starters from the secondary, and even though it's really talented, like there's a chance for miscommunications. If Georgia Tech capitalizes on that and is able to win vertically a few times, like it could end up becoming a game that you're trying to score points at a high volume if you're Florida State. And I don't think that's what Florida State's built to do this season. I think they want to do ground and pound type of football, win off of play action stuff with DJ Uiagalelei's arm. They don't want this to be a ball game that gets into the 30s. That's how Georgia Tech would win.
Okay, for that not to happen, let's end here. What's the biggest key for the Noles to start 1-0?
I think the main thing is going to be so cliche, but like you got to be able to run the football well. And part of that is that's what Florida State is designed to do. They return a majority of their starters on the offensive line. It's a hulking offensive line too. Multiple guys over 330 pounds. I mentioned Darius Washington earlier. Maurice Smith at center is a 4th-year starter now. He's been around since 2019. He was there before Mike Norvell was. So was Darius Washington. And both of them have had really good preseason camps, but you bring in some transfers from the SEC to kind of sprinkle in there and help out with the beef along the offensive line. Roydo Williams, you bring in at running back from Alabama. You return Lawrence Toafili, who has been just a very steady, like dual threat type of running back for you the last couple of years. He's been awesome in camp. And so running the football is something that you're built to do. And Georgia Tech was awful at stopping the run last year. They've brought in a new defensive coordinator, so we'll see what that looks like. But they were 130th nationally in yards per carry last year. I don't know how that gets rectified over the span in one season. Like I'm just not sure. So if you're able to win this game, it's because you're able to run the ball and do so consistently and get back on track. Last year's rushing attack for FSU was okay by their standards. It wasn't as good as 2022, and they think they have made some nice personnel changes in the offseason to kind of get back on track there. And I think Saturday would be a pretty good litmus test. If you can run the ball on Georgia Tech, you're probably feeling pretty good that you can, kind of build on that moving forward.
All right, we'll see. Not that you needed to sell any of us on this game. We are all starved for college football games. It's officially happening. Week 0 is here. Brendan, thank you so much for breaking down that game for us. As always, you can check out more of his work at Noles247.com. Also, our team site over at GoJackets.com for all things Georgia Tech. These are your sites, not just for this big game, but for all the games, all season long.
Starting a franchise, you need a franchise quarterback. Quarterbacks win games. If it wasn't for Caleb Williams, this guy could be the #1 quarterback. This guy can play from the pocket, play with timing, anticipation, make accurate throws, and got one of the best deep balls in this draft.
JJ doesn't have to come in, no pressure, nothing on him. Now he has to come in, learn the system, understand how to play quarterback, and in a year or two, be the guy in Minnesota.
What that organization needs, they need some Red Bull in there. They need just a fusion of a guy that gives you a chance to now compete for a Super Bowl. And Caleb Williams, so what we've seen in college, is that franchise-level quarterback.
We were certainly blessed with quarterback talent last year in college football, and now we're blessed with having Smoke Dixon here, national college football analyst, here on the show to talk more about those quarterbacks that were selected in the first round, a whopping 6 of them. So to remind you who those quarterbacks were, let's go ahead and show you. It went 1, 2, 3. First off the board was Caleb Williams, then you had Jaden Daniels, then Drake May, leaving holes in the Big Ten, SEC, and ACC. 2 more in the top 10, and Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy. And then the last quarterback taken in the first round, Bo Nix at number 12, just named the starter in Denver today. So a lot of depth there, but we here on a college football show want to talk about what's next with these teams that leave these gaping holes with their first round quarterbacks. And so we've had you rank the quarterbacks and the best situation, the ones that you feel the most okay about. We'll see. We'll say that. So let's start with the number 6 situation, and that is actually an ongoing quarterback battle at North Carolina between Max Johnson and Connor Harrell. Why did you put them at 6?
Well, before we even jump into this whole quarterback jumble of replacing first-round quarterbacks, we all know that's one of the hardest things to do, is replace the franchise guy that's done so good for your organization and your college for so many years. Replacing them is a tough job, but somebody has to do it. So let's start off with North Carolina, like you said. It's Max Johnson for me right now at number 6, but we also have Connor Harrell. Max Johnson comes in as a guy that's done it. Transferred from Texas A&M, comes in, son of Brad Johnson. He has a ton of experience, son of a quarterback. So he understands how to play the position. Connor Harrell now gives them a chance. With Chip Lindsey's offense, can kind of get out and do some dual threat things, but he also can play from the quarterback, from the pocket. And when you look at it like that, you have 2 guys. You're going to go into the week 1 with Max possibly starting, and that's what they're saying now. But I can see where Connor Harrell has a chance to come in and by game 6, 7, take that over by just playing well.
All right, the next quarterback situation that we want to highlight, again, this is ranked by which quarterback that you feel best about. So we're actually going to go to Michigan. You're thinking it's Alex Orji. Technically, he has not officially been named the starter, so that is another quarterback competition. What do you think about him?
Well, my guy Sam came on and said it's going to be Orji. And just knowing that family and working with the 2 older brothers at Vanderbilt, and lightheartedly we recruited this guy, Alex. But at that time, he was more of an athlete than he is a passer. And what you see now when he's at Michigan, he's developed the skill set of learning how to play from the pocket. So this year, Michigan, all they want to do is run the ball anyway. So when you have Alex in there, you're going to have the ability to now develop him along the way of just playing slow. Hand the ball off, have some zone reads, have some quarterback runs, and if they have to throw the ball 5 times, I think he can actually do it.
All right, one of the quarterbacks that I believe is in the most challenging situation has got to be the quarterback that's replacing the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and that's at LSU with quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. What do you think about his potential?
What a tall task to replace 50 touchdowns and the starter now for the Washington Commanders. But when you look at Garrett Nussmeier, the thing that he does well, he gets the ball out of his hands. He knows how to play on time. Joe Sonnone is now the offensive coordinator. He's going to allow him to have easy throws, easy access throws. Because when you have a quarterback that hasn't played that much, the number one thing you want to do is when you come out of any game, you want to say, how many chances did I give him to actually win the game for us and not lose the game for us? Because when you're asking a quarterback that hasn't had that much experience, first time out there, you put him in a stadium where they're expecting 35 to 50 touchdowns, and it's a tall task to ask a young man to come in and do that, but there are weapons around him. So at the end of the day, you say, okay, RPO, simple passes, screen passes. Let's extend these drives with short throws, and then we have the opportunity to take that big chunk throw, we'll give it to him. But that's far and few, and not allowing him to make those mistakes that will cripple a quarterback.
Definitely coming in with some expectations in terms of for that position, but he is a completely new quarterback with completely new expectations. So we'll see what happens there.
Ease him in.
Yes.
Don't rush him in.
Yeah. As we know, the SEC is, they always like to ease them in, right? It's just...
You like to
it
think
is the
so, but it
conference
don't.
of throwing you straight into the fire, especially at a place like LSU. There are expectations to have no drop-off from a guy that won a Heisman Trophy last year. So that is why you have LSU at number 4. So at number 3, we're talking about Washington, and that is Will Rogers. So we're starting to get into some of those transfer quarterbacks, and the stats been thrown about. 5 of the last 7 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks have been transfers, so we're not afraid of transfer situations, and he's done a lot in college football already.
Well, the thing that you love about Will is Will understands how to play the game from just a pure aspect of throwing the football and understanding vertical options, horizontal options, allowing himself to read high-low options on the first level, second level. Arm strength is not great enough to make those extended throws down the field, but you have an experienced guy. And when you have that, you have a stabilizer. When you have a stabilizer, now you have a true opportunity to go into games and win them by him not losing them. So Will's not the guy that's going to come in and give you 50 touchdowns just because of how he can create plays, but he can create plays by playing the game from the shoulder up. Number one thing that, talking to Sean Payton, Pep Hamilton, a lot of quarterback guys, the number one thing they'll tell you is we have to have the ability to get out of the huddle and execute a play first. Before we even get the ball in our hands, the quarterback has to process it, understand who he's supposed to go to, what checks he has to make. All that has to happen within that quick. Will Rogers gives you that opportunity to do that just because he's played so much and he's seen every single defense that you can throw at him. He's done it. You're not going to fool this guy. It's just now ability for him.
He's played at the highest level, too. He has records in the SEC. He holds the record for most completions in his 4 years at Mississippi State. So he has been there, done that.
He's done a few things.
Yeah.
But again, on the coach lease, they threw the ball almost every, or 80% throws.
Yep.
So and a lot of those throws weren't past 10 yards. So again, that's what you're going to have to battle. He can get the ball out of his hand, but sometimes it's the best thing. Get the ball out of your hands to the playmakers to make plays, because he's not a playmaker. He's just a deal maker.
Elsewhere in the Big Ten, yes, if you have forgotten, we're here to remind you in week 0 that Oregon and Washington are both part of the Big Ten, so that's where we go next, is to Oregon and their quarterback situation. Dillon Gabriel, you talk about a guy that's played a lot of college football. This is his 3rd school that he's on after most recently transferring from Oklahoma. What do you think about his situation with the Ducks?
Situation is beautiful because you have a team that's ready to win now. So when you have a team that's ready to win now with talent like Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, and you're in the ideal situation with 2 bookend tackles, you're not going to get touched. So the thing that you got to ask yourself is, okay, how can we get a quarterback after Bo Nick leave to come in and just replace the production, not the player, the production? And he can. He can get the ball to the playmakers. He's seen every single defense. Like we said, this is his 3rd school, 3rd stop. Everywhere he's been, they've thrown the ball a ton. So he understands passing concepts, how to get the ball out of his hands, and he does not need to be a superstar. He just needs to be one of the stars that shines bright. And I think he gives you that opportunity just because of his ability to play from the shoulders up, and he has some talent when that pocket breaks down, he can create on his own.
Do have to follow up with this because he is a Heisman Trophy favorite in a lot of sports books right now, yet you have him 2nd on this list of quarterbacks who are replacing QBs that were taken in the 1st round. Why is he not number 1 for you?
Well, you also have to put in talent. And the next guy that I'm going to say, and we're not going to say his name yet, he's more talented than Gabriel. If Gabriel did not have all the pieces around him, we wouldn't be talking about him winning the Heisman Trophy. Because him going out there alone, yeah, he's not going to do it. He left the last place that he was at, and I don't think anyone was screaming for him to come back. And that's not no shot on him. That's just understanding the place that he's at right now and the team that he's with. He's with the ideal team for his situation to help himself out, to pursue his opportunity to play in the NFL. By no means am I knocking his ability to play. It's just the guy that's in front of him is a better player. And at the end of the day, we're going to go ahead and give us number one.
Yeah, that guy is USC's Miller Moss. So for those keeping track at home, he is your number one quarterback on this list of QBs replacing first-round picks. He was just named the starter officially yesterday, Smoke. So the fact that it took all the way up until training camp, I don't know if that's a Lincoln Riley thing or what, but what do you think about his situation at USC?
Well, Lincoln Riley is a guy that also had Caleb Williams on his team when he was at Oklahoma, and he didn't start him at the end of the day. So we understand that the suspense is part of it.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about actual ability, yeah, head and shoulders above the rest of these guys on this list. If you had an average team around Miller Moss, he can make that average team good just because he can play from the pocket, extends plays when he needs to, can make throws at the first level, meaning outs right now, far side field, zip it in there because he has an arm strength. He has the ability to throw with touch to drop it over the second level defenders and drop it right in there. And when it's time to go downfield, yeah, the arm strength is there to make the plays. So he has talent, and he does have Lincoln Riley as his quarterback, coach, and his head coach. And I want to say that Lincoln's produced Caleb Williams and a few more guys that we're not going to run off. So Miller Moss is my guy. You saw him come out in the bowl game, lit it up, had great success. It's just the opportunity that he needs, and he has it right now. And I think, for me, he's number one. No knock on nobody else, but I would go to bat with this guy and win the game with him. With nothing else around me, I'm taking him.
Nobody else on that list is the reigning Holiday Bowl MVP. I'm obviously saying the least important part first. Also scored 6 touchdowns in that game, which broke a record for a bowl game. So
6 touchdowns is not easy to do. I'm talking about if no one's playing in that game, you still have to throw 6. Yeah. Tough. He's real good.
It's pretty impressive there. All right, so that is Smoke's quarterback list. While we've got you, we do have to remind the audience that it's not just Florida State versus Georgia Tech. We have some other games happening on week 0, 4 total. So we're going to quickly run through the last 3 games that we have not talked about, and you're just going to tell us why we should watch this game. So let's start with SMU at Nevada. Why should we watch?
We all know about in the ACC, yeah? They are in the ACC now, SMU.
Don't forget.
When you look at SMU, we're all talking about who's going to be that 4th team in the ACC. Why not SMU? Fertile recruiting ground. They have the budget. I mean, they were doing NIL way back then, but now it's legal, so they can do it now. And the way they've put their team together in the last few years, this is their time. I remember when I was at the University of Maryland, we played them. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd game. We was like, yeah, SMU, good team, but man, when they came out there and actually played, we walked away and said they really have something going on there. And the college world should be on notice. Recruiting staff, great. Personnel staff, they're doing it the right way. Phenomenal head coach, and in a few, maybe 7 games, come back and check with me on that quarterback. He's one of the good ones that's going to be maybe in that this year's draft, if not next year's draft. They're going to put numbers up. And look out for SMU because they can score, and nobody plays defense anymore in college football.
Well, at the very least, you should watch this game to remind yourself that SMU is in the ACC. They are making their debut in a Power 4 conference in this very game. Moving on to Montana State at New Mexico. Why should we watch that game?
Bronco is back. Where has he been? We've been
We
looking
don't
for
know.
you, Bronco. But he's back. And when you talk about Bronco, the number one thing you got to talk about is hard-nosed, tough defense. And he's a program stabilizer. He did the same thing at Virginia. It's a hard place to win out there now in New Mexico. But hats off to you. Welcome on back. But that's what I'm looking for. I want to see my man Bronco come back and show the world that he still can coach at a high level.
Bronco Mendenhall, the head coach of New Mexico, now stepped down from Virginia in 2021 and has not coached since then. So it really is a re-emergence of a coach that has had a lot of success at BYU ahead of that as well. And so we should watch it to see the reemergence of Bronco. The final game that we want to highlight, Delaware State at Hawaii. By the way, those are the Hornets, which I think is a fantastic mascot. And just check that. It makes me want to pick them in this game, but what do you think? Why should we watch this game?
Well, We got to know if are they on their plane flight yet? Because they just missed.
They
their
did.
flight.
They missed their flight. I'll quickly run through it. They missed their 10.5-hour flight. They were supposed to go direct from JFK to Honolulu. They had some issues. Their bus arrived late, and so the entire team and staff missed their 10.5-hour flight. Now they've got to somehow figure out how to get everybody to Honolulu, but they have some time until Saturday.
Emily, I made that trip back my senior year from Tuscaloosa to Hawaii. That flight sucked.
Yeah, it's long.
Yeah, getting there is great. And we played against Timmy Chang. Timmy Chang's now the head coach, and I'm willing and I'm ready to see my man Timmy Chang, good friend, put up some numbers in terms of scoring points. I feel sad for you guys at Dell State. It's going to happen. And then my good buddy Dennis Thurman, defensive coordinator. He's going to apply pressure, and Timmy's going to put up a lot of points. So you're going to see points, and that quarterback's going to be on the ground a ton. Hopefully y'all make that flight. It's going to be not a good one going back.
It'll be tough.
Yeah, I'm going to take Hawaii.
But they just need to get there first before they can come back. We are thinking of the Hornets as they try to make their trek all the way to Honolulu. Something tells me, though, when you make it, though, it's worth it, though, right? Palm trees, beaches.
Sand in the toes.
Yeah.
But coming back, you're going to be bruised up.
It'll be tough. All right, we are excited to see this Week 0 slate. Smoke, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us. If you want more Smoke Dixon, you can have more of him with Carl Reed on Unfiltered. New episodes go live on the 247 Sports YouTube channel on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5 Eastern, and that's going to officially do it for our show. Happy college football viewing, and thank you so much for watching 247 Sports Live.